Hi everyone, I'm Lynn Woodland, and I'm the author of a couple of books about miracles. The first one is Holding a Butterfly, an experiment in miracle making. And the second one is The Breakthrough Point, a spiritual activist guide to thriving in modern times. And both books take readers into an experiential miracle experiment. And this is the year-long Wednesday night Miracles course class. So in the month of September, as you know, we've devoted every session to some aspect of healing. And tonight, we're going to give attention to the connection between personal healing and world healing. Especially, I couldn't be more relevant just a few months out from a pretty important presidential election where nothing is precedented anymore. Everything's historically kind of cattywampus. It's a very important one. So we'll give a little bit of attention to bringing healing around some of that. But let me go back a little bit. Some years ago, both in front of groups and in published print, I shared the story of how I let go of migraines that had plagued me for decades, most of my life, really. And in a great burst of insight, at some point, I recognized the unconscious payoffs that migraines offered and had a spontaneous healing experience. We've talked about payoffs here before a few weeks ago, and I talked about this experience too, so I'm not going to go deep into it. But after that revelation and healing, I went months, then a year, then longer still without a migraine for the first time in my adult life. However, early in September of 2005, the week following Hurricane Katrina, I was struck with the worst and longest lasting migraine of my life. It let up finally. I went to my weekly class on Tuesday night, a mess, and the members of my class just looked at me and saw what a mess I was and said, "You're it tonight. You're going to be the receiver," and they declared me it, and turned all my teachings on me by supporting me while I just cried my head off and my headache away. It really mostly let up, not completely, but mostly. People held me and let me talk, and I really sobbed. I even screamed, I wailed. All this pain just came out. And that previous week, those days when I was just suffering through this awful bout with pain, I noticed just a number of different people wondering out loud, what's in the air? Saying that they and all of their friends just seemed to be feeling bad, antsy, anxious, depressed for no discernible reason. Yet, to me, it makes perfect sense that in times of tremendous collective suffering, we all feel the reverberations in some way, no matter how far away we may be from ground zero. And this is when I was living in Minneapolis. So I was nowhere near Louisiana. But the spiritual truth, the truth that exists beyond the illusionary appearance of our separateness from other beings, the real truth is our oneness. Consequently, this month of healing work, I think, would not be complete without giving attention to world healing, especially in this such a crucial time for the world. Now, one notion I want to dispel before I go any further is that when the world suffers, the more sensitive souls among us just soak it up like vibrational sponges. that sponge metaphor is so damaging in that assumes and perpetuates powerlessness. I mean, what can you do if you're a sponge? All you can do is soak up stuff. That's all you can do. A sponge is a very passive object. Is that really how we want to go through life? Even if we feel that we are sensitive as sponges? No, nobody really wants to do that. What I find to be a truer and more empowering explanation for why we're affected by the feelings of others, it's not so much that we're absorbing their emotion, it's that we're joining with them at an energy level that's also very alive and active within us. And the matching emotion we share flares up to vibrate in tandem with similar energy. And as like meets like, each amplifies the other. So when the world screams, whatever unreleased suffering we have living within us, and we all have some, we're all kids. None of us had perfect childhoods, even with the best parents. Children get traumatized because we're very little and impressionable, and vulnerable. So things that wouldn't seem terrible to an adult, to a 2-year-old or 1-year-old, can be formative, can go in. So we all have this kind of stuff, and it may be so neatly buried that we don't even know it's there. But it gets dredged up, agitated, and magnified when we encounter big emotions outside of us. Now, there's some who might say that to suffer with the world is part of being a compassionate being. However, taking on the wounds of the world, it simply leaves us more wounded. We become another soul in need of emergency care, rather than one able to offer help and be a guiding light. So the key to turning disempowered woundedness into powerful compassion lies in feeling and releasing suffering rather than simply carrying it. In many ways, this is the path of the shaman, although that is a very, very skilled, it requires a lot of training path of healing. But the idea of the shaman is that they will take someone's dis-ease into their own body and transform it there, and really different from just channeling through. Like any of you who've experimented with energy healing or learned Reiki or any of those things, it's much more about channeling than that shamanic approach. But I'm sharing that because there are different ways to deal with that kind of empathy than simply taking it on and being made ineffective and ineffectual by it. What we're going to talk about tonight is the whole idea that as we clear painful emotion, as we feel it and allow it to come up and release it, what happens is that intense pain can transform into intense love. And then from this well of love, we have the potential to become heroic. When we're no longer carrying the weight of the world, we become free to serve it. Now, the Sunday after I had my own little experience in my Tuesday night group, I gave a Sunday service at the church where I was one of the ministers. And this was 2005, and it was September 11th. And this was a time when 2001 was really still pretty painfully fresh. It was just 4 years back instead of 24 years. And it was also while the Gulf area was still reeling from Katrina. So there was a lot going on, a lot of world suffering that we were being reminded of, even though those of us who lived so far away from ground zero in Minnesota. And that Sunday, what I did is I led the members of this whole spiritual community. It was a big room full of people in weeping for the world. In fact, I had a friend who had once been very phobic around screaming. Like, if anyone screamed in front of her, she'd just go into trauma until she learned to scream herself. And she became one of the best screamers I have ever met. And I asked her if she would demonstrate, to tell a little bit about her story and demonstrate. And she talked a little bit, and she let out a shriek that was so from her deep down core that everyone was so touched. And soon the whole room full of people were weeping for the world. It was just coming out very spontaneously. People were sobbing and holding each other, and we screamed, and we wailed, and we cried. And afterward, there was this palpable feeling of peace and clarity that wasn't there before. And I noticed that the very last remnant of my week-long headache, poof, gone, didn't come back, didn't have any more issues with migraines after that. And then we were able to rise to a higher place. There was some conversation afterward. We did some intuiting, where we shared with one another our intuition of some spiritual purpose to all the pain, to some spiritual purpose to some of the suffering we saw in the world. And many felt inspired to make a personal commitment to action, to social justice in one form or another. That all came out of that experience where people were able to let go of the pain, to release it. Then came this clarity and willingness to just take action, to help, to serve. And when we find ourselves feeling burdened by the world's suffering, we can help heal it rather than carry it by releasing the piece of our own pain in the name of world healing. In other words, we know it's our own, and yet we're not just rolled up in ourselves. We're dedicating our own personal work to the bigger beyond of everyone. And just as we're affected by each other's pain, so are we impacted by one another's healing, especially when we hold that intention that my healing is everyone's healing. I am doing this for myself and the world. We attach a bigger intention to it. And what we say here, intentions become reality as we think it. It is so. So instead of imagining yourself as a sponge, see yourself as an oscillator. An oscillator sets a rhythm for, the heart is an oscillator for the other organs in the body, setting a rhythm of health that pulls other organs into alignment with it. So imagine yourself as an oscillator setting in motion a rhythm of healing powerful enough to draw others into it. So one of the exercises in the online materials that I won't go deeply into here, but read those materials, is to create your own ritual for clearing the pain of the world, the pain that also lives in you, and rising to a place where you can become part of the healing vibration of love for the world. So I want to talk about a few of the basics. Okay. we have someone wanting to come in. We'll see if it's Tina trying to sneak in. Hopefully not. Firstly, what we give attention to, we make bigger. Hello, iPhone 3. Would you tell us your name? Would you tell us who you are? Oh, is that Mary? No, it's not Mary. Hey, iPhone 3, would you tell me your name? Okay, if I don't hear anything from you, I'm just going to remove you. All right, goodbye. So I was saying, what we give attention to, we make bigger. We live in an era of incredibly rapid change, where it's always possible to find convincing evidence that the world is hopelessly falling apart, or evidence of a powerful coming together. We can choose to give our attention to everything wrong and fight it, and protest it, and despair about it, or we can align ourselves and our efforts with the positive growth emerging from the rubble of what's fallen apart. And whether we take a fighting, a despairing, a denying, or a creative stance in response to collective suffering is probably not dissimilar to how we approach our own personal struggles. When we give more energy to our pain and our outrage over what's wrong than we do to creating an alternative, the power of our attention actually holds the problem in place. You know, it's like going to war, you know, battling something, we may win a battle, but that doesn't really create peace. It doesn't necessarily end a war. So, you know, anyway, the next important point to recognize is that despair is disempowering. It's not an effective state for bringing about healing. Our personal despair, it does a lot of things. It weakens our immune system. Our despair for another makes us ineffective as a healer and a helper. Our despair for the world renders us incapable of making a difference. We just become powerless that way. Now, the third thing to recognize is that rage isn't the most effective source of motivation. While it's way less immobilizing than despair, as I was saying, the highest potential of anger is to win a battle. It doesn't really have the power to create peace. Anger is only capable of creating a temporary ceasefire through dominance, one that only lasts until the next war. Now, the fourth thing is that inner peace really is the only state that creates outer peace. And just as unconditional love and inner peace are the most powerful states for personal healing and manifestation, they're the only states that can bring about true peace and well-being in the world. Peace comes from finding what we love and serving it, not by seeking what we most hate and fear and fighting it. In many circles, rage is seen as a necessary force for change. I remember seeing a bumper sticker once. Actually, I saw this around a lot for a while. It said, if you're not outraged, you're not paying attention. But a healed state of mind can see options that were previously invisible. When we're at peace inwardly, we have the power to call forth peacefulness in others in a way that dominance and rage can't. Everyone has a unique path and purpose in the world, and our personal right action just naturally emerges from a healed state of mind. When we've achieved inner peace, we simply know where we're meant to be and what we're meant to do and how we can be the most effective. So fulfilling our life's purpose requires seeking out what we love and serving it. And in other lessons, we give attention to discerning where our true passion lies, because, as we've focused on here before, where there's passion, there's energy. Passion is a very potent force. But hatred is also a powerful passion, even though it's, not such a pretty one. And we often train ourselves to suppress and deny it. I know a lot of kind of new thought people who don't even like to say that word hate out loud. Hatred, we don't say that word. And just as our zest for life needs to be rekindled in the process of cultivating creative power, which is something we give attention to in the lighter months of the year, our hatred needs to be uncovered and recognized too, in order to cultivate our real healing power. What we most love to hate shows us where we've given power away. What annoys us the most in others invariably reflects some disowned attribute of our own personality. And just as passionate love will often signal our path of purpose and highest good, passionate hate shows our path to wholeness and healing. It shows us where we need to do some healing work. Carl Jung, who was the father of transpersonal psychology, used the term shadow. And I think, probably everyone here has heard of that reference. He used it to refer to a part of the unconscious personality consisting of personal, unknown aspects of the ego, aspects that we're more likely to see in others. And I don't think that the ego is a bad thing. The ego can be small and limited, but the ego serves us in many ways. So I don't think of ego as something we just have to lose and get rid of. I think of the ego rather as something that we need to keep enlarging and expanding to include more and more and more of God's will. Then our ego really becomes one of our greatest spiritual power tool. So our shadow, those unknown aspects of self are things that we're more likely to see in other people and feel a charge around than what we are to recognize in ourselves. In Jung's last book, Man and His Symbols, it's a wonderful book. It actually wasn't written by him so much. It was a collection of writings by his closest colleagues, and he edited it. So he kind of pulled it all together. One of the writers, Dr. Marie-Louise von Franz, writes of this whole process of projecting the shadow. I'm quoting here, if people observe their own unconscious tendencies in other people, this is called projection. Political agitation in all countries is full of such projections. Projections of all kinds obscure our view of our fellow men, spoiling its objectivity. And there is an additional disadvantage in projecting our shadow. If we identify our own shadow with, say, the communist or capitalist, she wrote this a long time ago, I would add, the Republicans or the Democrats. We identify our own shadow with, say, the Republicans or the Democrats. A part of our own personality remains on the opposing side. The result is that we shall constantly, though involuntarily, do things behind our own backs that support this other side, and thus we shall unwittingly help our enemy, end quote. I mean, that's deep. As much as we love to hate on the other side, for any of us who are, watch politics, and it's hard not to in this particular season. We love to hate on the other side. Think of that. We are unwittingly helping our enemy. So achieving wholeness and true empowerment requires recognizing that a piece of the enemies we encounter in life, they also live within us. In fact, Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, who was the one who pioneered work around death and dying so many years ago, she often said, we all have an inner Mother Teresa and an inner Hitler. Some of my favorite quotes by her. And this holds true not only in our personal relationships, but also for those things we find most hateful about the world. Its leaders, ideologies, structures of power and resulting practices, things that seem very removed from us as individuals, kind of larger than life. These collective representatives of power become the perfect screens to hold the projections of our own personal shadows, precisely because they're so removed from our personal sphere and seemingly out of our control. Our very powerlessness makes it feel easier to justify hatred. Healing our own hatred of others really is nothing more than healing our own self-hatred. And maturing into wholeness ultimately brings a shift in our passionate nature so that we genuinely love to love more than we love to hate. That I'm right and I'm so right and look how wrong they are. That becomes less compelling than our love, our passionate love of loving, even to the point of loving the ones who might be most inclined to trigger us. And we forgive not because it's the right thing, and we don't do it for the other party. We do it because it's the most self-serving thing. Forgiveness is something that serves the forgiver most of all. So the healing exercise we're going to do here begins with the premise that whatever or whomever in current world events triggers our strongest outrage, and God knows we're in the midst of it right now. We have never been so polarized. I mean, it is crazy out there. I would say most people who pay any attention to the news have someone they love to hate. It's hard not to, or we've just really tuned out of it completely. And that's kind of I won't even go there. That's a thing too. Whatever is triggering us reflects some part of our shadow self, our inner Hitler. The world leaders we most vilify are the ones who best embody our own hidden self. So in the next exercise, we're going to combine the personal work of shadow healing with the bigger work of world healing by directing healing to our world leaders. We're going to pick two world leaders and direct healing to them. And I suggest focusing attention first on pick one of the leaders of our country. I think everyone here is from the United States. That's not always the case. But I would include Biden or Harris as one of them. The second leader will be of your own choosing. And since we're working with healing darker shadow energies, make one of the two you pick, one of the United States leaders, Harris, Biden, pick one of them, and make one of the people you pick, maybe the other leader, or be sure that you have one who is the person who most triggers your outrage. So if it's Harris or Biden who most triggers your outrage, then the other political leader you would pick would be someone who doesn't, maybe someone you really love and think highly of. So, though I've emphasized the self-healing nature of this work, what we're doing is also a significant act of healing for the individual subjects. And there's absolutely no difference in the impact of laying hands on someone in a face-to-face, hands-on healing session, and offering healing from a distance, unless you believe there is. Larry Dossey wrote a book just convincingly documenting, and Healing Words was the book, convincingly documenting the power of prayer to heal, even at a distance, even if recipients are unaware of prayers being said on their behalf. So his more recent book, called One Mind, great book, he just gives fascinating insight into the ways we're all connected through a compilation of dozens and dozens and dozens of anecdotes of things that can't be explained, of mind melds, of connecting in consciousness that can't be explained in any way other than there being a one mind where we are all connected. Great book, One Mind, Larry Dossey, I recommend it. Now, it's also important to note that the healing we're offering here is not about giving an advantage to the bad guys. So one of these leaders is going to be the one you love to hate the most. One of them is going to be one of the United States president or vice president, one of them, Harris or Biden, be one. So we'll be sending healing right to the upper realm of our own government. And then there will be another one. And of these two that you pick, make sure that one is the one you love to hate and one is one you love, feel pretty good about. So we're not going to, even though there's one that you might love to hate, maybe a lot, we're not giving an advantage to that person by sending healing. Healing always brings out the best in a person. And remember, healing follows intention, and here our intent is that of spiritual healing, to join with the higher self of another to call it forth. Our higher spiritual self is the part of us that exists beyond the illusions of separateness and beyond the illusions of holding power over another. When, in the realm where we're all one, no one can hold power over another or even harm another. And at this level, we're aligned with the highest good of all and can't help but serve the collective good. So this is a really different kind of healing. It involves assessing and repatterning the childhood wounds that affect present health and well-being. It works on a similar principle as the healing we did last week, where we went back in time, only instead of drawing from our personal memories, we'll practice using our psychic and intuitive faculties. This way of working may or may not come easily to you. If it doesn't, don't worry about it. We'll go on to something different next week. If you do feel drawn to working this way, I know some people here have had Reiki training and other modalities of healing training. Know that the more you practice this, the more easily it will come. And there's also a lot more in the written materials about how to use this with another person, like in a one-on-one session that you might be doing with someone if you do that kind of work. And the ethics of it and how to do it responsibly, because this is kind of deep in there. You know, when you're messing with somebody's childhood and your intuition, you want to be very careful about what you share out loud. So essentially what we're going to do is make an intuitive guess about the subject's childhood experience, just as we imagine back to our own younger time in last week's exercise. We're going to let imagination show us a time in this other person's past. And in a similar way, we'll envision healing for the child this adult leader once was. And imagination is powerful. It's often the way we begin to receive intuitive and psychic impressions. So what you imagine through this might be remarkably accurate. I've had some really interesting experiences doing this with groups over the years, where people will just get, you know, about the same age with the same leader with very similar things going on. So it might surprise you. The images that come to you might be literally accurate, or your impressions may come in metaphors, describing the emotional truth of a situation, offering healing toward the emotional wound instead of the presenting symptoms. It's really a pretty powerful form of healing. And I stumbled upon this method of healing a gazillion years ago when I was in my early 20s and leading my first weekly healing group. I would do hands-on healing with people. And a frequent participant was this very sweet 16-year-old boy. He was really on his own. He was of a single mom, mostly lived on the street. I think she was a drug user and not very present in his life. But he always came to these healing services. And one night he arrived with a really badly infected cut on his hand that had these angry red streaks that were just going all the way up his arm. I mean, my eyes kind of popped out of my head when I saw that. And I was making plans in my mind to rush him to the emergency room the minute group ended, because looked like blood poison, looked terrible, terrible. And as I closed my eyes, as he was in the center for healing, closed my eyes, I placed my hands on him. And during I held his hand very, very lightly. And during the healing session, I just got this strong impression that he was crying out for a father's strong guidance, like a fatherly male figure to literally take him by the hand and guide him through life, literally and figuratively. And as I just touched his hand, held his hand, I pictured a fatherly spiritual being reaching out to him and taking him by the hand and leading him. And the image was so vivid, it just nearly overwhelmed me in its clarity and its power, just the emotional intensity of it. I was almost crying, trying to, keep it together. And when I opened my eyes, I mean, everyone in the group was kind of horrified when they saw this poor little boy's, his hand and his red streaks. And like, we were all pretty astonished to see that the streaks were completely gone from his arm. And the cut just looked like a wound that was already on the mend. And I didn't take him to the ER. And the cut healed pretty quickly over the next week. And the healing communication that I received, it didn't require words. I never shared my experience out loud with him. But nonetheless, the root emotional cause of his infection was addressed. And he received, I believe, at some energy level, that male, energy guidance that he was calling out for. Now, in a similar way, we're going to offer to our world leaders, even the one we love to hate, the spiritual assistance that they're most in need of, as a service to them, but also to ourselves and to the world, because world leaders, they have a big footprint. Even the ones we think are kind of hateful, they have a big footprint. So to bring some light into where their limitations have maybe been creating more darkness than light can only help. So here we go. Just close your eyes and just quiet your thoughts with some deep, slow breaths. Relax. And just turn your attention inward, let your sense of identification shift from the small self of your personality in your body to your spiritual higher self. Just imagine yourself as more than your body, or your thoughts, or your emotions, or your personal history. Know yourself in this moment to be a beautiful, radiant being of light. And you can see the higher selves of all of those who are and have and even will participate in this miracles course. Past, present, and future now joining you, all beings of light. And we've all gathered beyond the illusionary limits of space and even time, because time, we know, is more illusionary than real. We've gathered in a magnificent sacred arena in the spiritual realm. As we join together on behalf of one another in loving, caring intent, we become a tremendously powerful force for healing and for good. We're so much stronger together than we could ever be separately. And every time the circle meets, its energy increases through repetition, empowering each of us in our own personal growth to be healers to the world, as well as to ourselves. So take a moment to just feel the energy, the power of our circle building within you. Stronger, stronger. And now picture in your mind's eye one of the two political leaders of the United States, either Biden or Harris. You choose. And as you hold this person in mind, just be aware of your personal feelings toward the individual. If you have judgments or anger, it's not necessary to resolve these issues of your personality right now. Simply put them to the side so your identification can remain with your higher self. And use the perspective of your spiritual higher self to see this leader now as a person rather than a symbol. Because we can't heal a symbol, only the person. And see this individual through the eyes of your higher self as a radiant spiritual being, an expression of divine love and fully worthy of your love. So take a moment to experience the divine love that is you, joining with the divine love that is this other. And now, from a place of wise perspective and unconditional love, picture the person and see him or her becoming the child they once were. And let your imagination show you an image of the child at a time when he or she needed something that wasn't given. And let details start to come into focus. See what age the child is. If you're not sure, let a number just pop into your mind. Notice where the child is, who's there, what's going on, how they're feeling. See what's needed and not there. As a picture of this earlier time comes clear, invite the help of a healing guide, a spiritual being who will provide the child with what's most needed. So see who shows up as the perfect helper. Just let that unfold. And now your work is done, except to just witness and send love. So as you just watch the guide offer help and healing to the child, just let your heart be open. And see how the early life experience and its impact change now that the guide is here to offer love, support, safety, guidance, approval, or whatever the child never got. Just watch this healing take place and imagine it creating a new pattern that sends a ripple of healing forward in time, all the way to the person in the present. And let the scene reach a natural completion. And then let the child, the adult, and the guide disappear into light. And while still in a state of higher perspective, imagine there to be many non-physical master teachers and guides present, beings of light and love, working to assist the evolution of our planet and humanity. Feel them close, see their light, receive their love, ask to be shown the higher purpose to any world events that particularly trouble you. Ask to see the bigger picture in the way they do. And ask to be shown this world's leader, their role in the divine order. And now let your attention shift. And now picture in your mind's eye another important world leader, If the last person you gave attention to was not the one who most triggers your judgment and anger, then bring that person to mind. And as you hold this person in mind, be aware of, your personal feelings, knowing that you don't have to resolve all these personality issues. Just put them to the side so your attention can remain with your higher self and staying in that perspective. And let yourself see this leader as a person rather than a symbol. Remember, we can't heal a symbol, only a person. And know that even if this is someone you don't like, that everyone has an inner light. Everyone has a higher self. Everyone is part of God. So see this being as a piece of God, fully worthy of your love. And take a moment to experience the divine love that is you, joining with the divine love that is this other. And now, from a place of wise perspective and unconditional love, picture the person and see them becoming the child they once were. Let your imagination show you an image of the child at a time when he or she needed something that wasn't given. And the details start to come into focus. See what age the child is. Again, if you're not sure, just let a number sound in your mind. Notice where the child is, who's there, what's going on, how they're feeling. See what's needed and not there. And as a picture of this earlier time comes clear, invite the help of a healing guide, a spiritual being who's going to provide the child with whatever is most needed. So see who shows up as the perfect helper. And then just witness. Let it unfold. Step back and watch as the guide offers help and healing to the child. And see how the early life experience and its impact change now that the guide is here to offer the love, the support, the safety, the guidance, the approval, whatever the child needed. Watch this healing take place and imagine it creating a new pattern that sends a ripple of healing forward in time, all the way to the person in the present. And let the scene reach a natural completion. And then let the child, the adult, and the guide just disappear into light. And gently bring yourself back with a deep breath. I kept you a little late tonight. Thanks for hanging in there, because it's always so interesting hearing some of other people's intuitions around all this stuff. And there's more about how to work with this technique if it's something you're interested in for yourself or other people. So do dive into the written materials. And until I see you next week, I love you all.
Namaste.
Love you and bless you. Good night.